afternoon, everyone!
Hello!
Sorry, we are running so late.
It's my fault, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they talk about traffic in Cape Town as if we are in Kenya or Uganda, where it gets real, right?
It's lunchtime, so the traffic actually is real in Cape Town.
What happens? Cape Town is all
We
good.
all go for lunch.
At what? 12?
1.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Joba girl in me is like,
You must eat the 3 meals a day.
Okay, guys, I've got Nwabisa with me. She is an incredible entrepreneur. She has journeyed, and our journeys have been quite similar, right? But what I love about Nwabisa is that she's such a free spirit. I liquidated and I just decided, let me come back into it. I didn't go up to Austria and the US. No, but she did. So chat to us about your journey so far.
Okay, so I'm an entrepreneur, and I always am quite excited when I say this because whilst I've actually been an entrepreneur since 2005, 2004, when you start university but you don't have a registered entity.
Yeah.
So
side hustle.
Yeah, side hustle since 2004. I think it's only been in the last 3 years that I refer to myself as an entrepreneur. Up until then, I was somebody who ran a business and worked in a business. And I didn't have the realization of the fact that I'm an entrepreneur.
Let's chat about that, love, because I think it's also been an incredible discovery for me that yes, you have female founders, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're entrepreneurial.
Yes.
So when did that happen for you, that shift?
So the shift happened.
How did it happen?
Okay. So I think I can answer both those questions in one go. It happened, so I started my first company officially in 2005 with a business partner. And in that company, I was the hardest working person. I became so valuable to the company. I even derived a great sense of pride from being so important to my own company.
Yeah.
But it also meant that I then was an incredibly awesome employee, but not a founder or a business owner or an entrepreneur. So the first time I realized that a shift needed to happen was just through burnout. So sick, not coping, not loving life, just losing all sorts of excitement about the business.
Yeah.
And then also realizing that I didn't have to stay and maintain this business. The idea is to grow a business, delegate to other people, and go on to do other things. And so when I realized that I was more impassioned by the idea of starting a new business than maintaining an existing and well-running and successful business, that's when the shift started happening that, hold on, I'm actually an entrepreneur as opposed to a manager or a founder. And so even takes me back to a conversation I had just yesterday with my mentor, and we were having a conversation, the difference between a manager and a leader.
Yeah.
And really, I'm aspiring to sit in that space of being a leader, who's somebody who thinks about the future, who's somebody who adapts to change, and if possible, can even predict change, as opposed to somebody who manages change and stays in the present.
And I think there's nothing wrong with being a manager, but I think it's just identifying who you are, what you're good at, and becoming or mastering that space. And I love what Robin Sharma always says around mastering your craft. So I've also post-liquidation, and it took me 12 years to really know this about myself. Then I'm probably more a Richard Branson type entrepreneur than a Steve Jobs.
Absolutely.
And I think when you come to that realization, then you structure your life differently, you structure your decisions differently. And so I'm not looking at exiting when I'm old and gray. I know that I'm going to do a couple of different things from now for the rest of my life.
Yes.
Right?
So I think for me that it's been an incredible realization that I'm really, part of me is becoming the leader I want to be, so I can own that and admit that. And of course, I aspire to be a better leader. And because of that, I have to surround myself then with excellent managers who will do the things that I do not have the wiring for. And there are people who are critical to the growth of my business and therefore my growth as well. And so managers are incredible and they're important.
Absolutely.
In the same way that if if I was left alone in my own business as a leader, it's a complete nightmare for everyone else, because how I think and how I want to do things, because I'm sitting so far in the future and sometimes with the fairies, because you have to be a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
That's not always good for the day-to-day growth and the sustainability of a business. And so it really comes down to knowing yourself.
Yeah.
But once I started knowing more about myself, I definitely can say that I'm a better person, a better entrepreneur, a better leader, and hopefully a better mentor as well as being a better mentee.
You know, I love that. So I was having a chat yesterday with someone after running a strategic planning workshop with a few of our entrepreneurs. And I was saying to them, yes, especially I think as female founders, we have this monkey on our back where we want to control everything. And in doing so, you then recruit people that are your mini-me instead of surrounding yourself with smarter people.
Yes.
So what's different for me being in a new city, in a new business, is that I've surrounded myself with extremely smart people. They are way more superior at PwC when it comes to finance management. So asking them to craft a finance bootcamp was easy, and letting them do it. It just made my life so much easier. Whereas in the old business, I didn't do that.
You would do it yourself. You would spend all night researching this thing. You would write it yourself. You'd even design it, the graphic design, my friend. And then you'd also print it yourself, and then you'd pack it yourself. Like, I mean, I was tea lady, sweeper, logistics manager, client relationship, IT. If we needed to set up new emails in my business, I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah, I've got it.
Let me go on to Team Viewer. Let me phone the IT guy, and I'll manage everyone's emails.
Why?
I think it's actually an insecurity. It comes from, it's this idea of being so scared that if you're not in control of everything, it may just all fall apart. And here's now the big realization. It might all fall apart, but then that's just that fact. It fell apart. You're not a bad person. You're not a failure. It's just something happened that could have been related to the market, business management. I don't know, but it's not Antoinette who's now the failure. So I think it's the idea of us pinning so much of ourselves into our businesses. And so something that is a little bit counterintuitive, I think, over time is realizing that, one, we need to be able to take a bit of a step back from our own businesses, particularly as women. So the language of referring to our businesses as our babies.
I can go on about that.
We must stop doing that.
Yeah.
If you want a baby, there are ways to
or adopt a dog,
make one or get one, or then get a pet. And then so it's the language of parenting, which I think is strange, and we need to walk away from that. And then the idea of sometimes this idea of following your passion. So yes, passion is incredible, but often when we just are so cause driven and we're following our passion in our businesses, all of those emotions are tied up within the business, and so its success or failure then relates and impacts directly on my emotional well-being. And so somebody once said to me, follow your pattern, not your passion. Because suddenly your pattern will actually start illustrating to you what you're good at.
Yeah.
Your passion is obviously a lot more around hard work, and that can come through later on. But this is a bigger conversation today. And I think it's a contentious issue, but I'm starting to interrogate that idea of pattern versus passion when it comes to your business.
Right, love, because what we're also trying to instill in the women on the program is stop operating from your heart space and operate more from your head space, which is why we've got the strategic planning workshops running now, so that they stop reacting to their businesses and drive it. So back to the leadership conversation, right? Because if you can't lead yourself, you cannot even think about leading somebody else. And so if you're in that space where you are still reacting to your business, start questioning yourself. Am I driven by passion more than I am by my pattern? So I love that. So say that again for me.
Follow your pattern and not your passion. So it's challenging because
as women we operate from our emotional space. It's where we live. It's where we reside.
I think we've been socialized in some weird way to be beings that follow passion and are driven by passion, and the so-called examples of successful people, we're told these are people who were very passionate about X, Y, Z. And I think it's a naming issue in terms of passion versus integrity, ambition. You know, there are many other things that build into that word passion.
Yeah. And what are you good at? What are you really good at? And master that.
Yes.
I think for me is way more important than anything else.
Absolutely.
And once you understand that I am really good at connecting people and bringing communities together and creating ecosystems, but there's certain things about this whole process that I'm not good at, then I'm comfortable now after 13 years to say I'm gonna get people that are good at finance management. So we have PwC.
No, and thank you, PwC. No, it is so important to surround yourself with the right people. And I think across the spectrum, even if we start looking hierarchically, so in terms of the people who are above you, so superior than you, your so-called subordinates, though it's a difficult word to use, but even those who are supporting you and assisting you from below, you've got to be so intentional and pay attention to that whole ecosystem of your support, because that feeds into you and the growth of your business. And so mentoring matters.
It does. It so does, love. So talk to me about Austria, your trip.
Yes.
Speaking of that collaboration, right?
Yes. So maybe I'll preface it with a little bit of my journey as well, which is since the 1st of July, I decided that I'm not going to have a fixed address.
I love that. I love it.
So
a nomad.
And it's interesting because I'm not a millennial. I'm 36, and so what am I doing? But actually, there is this millennial driver in me, and it was actually driven by two things. The first was slightly negative when the South African economy was sort of going through technical recession. I realized that the pie was not only just shrinking, it might have been disappearing on some level. So here we are as entrepreneurs, encouraging more entrepreneurs to join us, but we're actually eventually going to be fighting for the same clients. So it so happens that in my journey, I have been privileged enough to be gifted with a global network. So the first was, how do I future-proof myself from a technical recession, which potentially at the time could have gone into a full-blown recession. So I was quite terrified about that. The second then was, in doing that, I need to globalize myself, globalize my business, globalize the ability to attract clientele from everywhere. And so I then radically said, fine, I need to give up my address and then be ready at a heartbeat to be where I need to be and experience what I need to experience around the world. But at all times with the intention of establishing community wherever I go and planting roots and establishing networks. I'm all about social capital. So as things happened, the moment I made that decision, a couple of things started aligning themselves. And so one of those was then an invitation to go on a leadership program to Austria in September last year. So I spent a week in Vienna and Salzburg and Innsbruck, meeting all kinds of captains of industry in Austria and people from the state, and obviously the people in my network, and so fellow Africans, people from around the world. Incredible. But what it then did is that it allowed for then this little free spirit and this little busybody to make friends and to start talking about who I am and what I do. And I started planting seeds. And so 3 months later, I got an invitation back from the Austrian government asking me to then present at a conference, which was at the end of January. The conference was hosted by the Economic Federal Chamber of Austria, and it was all about exposing Austrian business owners to Africa, to African thoughts, to African leadership. And so as the keynote speaker, I was kind of given free rein to speak about whatever I wanted to speak about, whilst other people then obviously focused on technical things. And so my talk really was about, you know, how do we grow the female entrepreneur in Africa? And for me, it's looking at the idea that we need capital. But we need capital that's split into three aspects, which is then your financial capital, which is obviously investment in your business. We need human capital, so the right people doing the right things in our businesses. But that also opens up the space for our counterparts in places like Austria to also think about how they can transfer skills into our businesses as they're engaged with us. And so if you're a client, think about what you can offer my business whilst also paying me my fees. And then the third is social capital, which is the idea that if you feel you still can't contribute into my business, the best thing you can do is to take my card and mention my business to one other person in your circle. Is to advocate for my business, is to talk about my business, so that people can then buy from my business and partner with my business. And that's, for me, the way of growing the female entrepreneur.
I love that. And the fact that you've broken it into 3 segments means that anybody can really contribute to your business.
Yes.
Because I might not have the finances, but I might have the social capital. So when people say, oh, there isn't really much I can do for your business, I think once you break it down the way you have, you can do something for someone.
Yes.
So from a social capital perspective, I might not be able to afford or I might not be able to invest in your hair care company, but I can refer my community and people around me to buy from you.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
So you love Austria, the States, like what a journey. What an incredible platform. I suppose my question is for South Africans possibly thinking about an Austrian market, what are the top 3 things that they're looking for?
They're such an interesting market because, secret, Austria is like top 10 wealthiest nation on the planet. So when we talk market, there is serious money, serious market that's open there. From a socio-political point of view, Austria's never really had a relationship with Africa. So that's actually a good thing because there isn't a post-colonial sort of baggage that's hanging between Austria and African countries.
Okay.
So it actually is quite an interesting market to deal with. What they are looking for, it's knowledge. So they love knowledge-based companies. So I can talk about my company where we are all about promoting the growth of female entrepreneurs. And so suddenly there are people in Austria who are saying, we'd love to co-create programs with you that we can then see and look at exchanges that can happen between Austrian entrepreneurs and South African entrepreneurs, for example. So anything to do with the knowledge-based business, they really are excited about that.
Okay.
There's a huge opportunity around our creative industries. So, but beautiful, well-created, well-crafted items, whether it's home care, accessories, clothing, or art, because we're talking of a very high LSM if we're talking in that language. This is a very discerning buyer. This is a very values-driven consumer who wants to buy something that is beautiful, yet has a story and also create something around sustainability. So interestingly enough, how Austrians are engaging with things like the sustainability development goals is actually so interesting. We're not talking about that here in South Africa. And yet when you're talking about your business, most people will say to you, what SDG are you looking at when you are running your business? And that's something very important because they're impact driven. So those are the top 2 that I can definitely name off the top of my head.
And I like the fact that they're plugging into something bigger than themselves from a global perspective. So what we encourage the women on the program to do is, we looked at King 5, for instance. Is it King 4? King 4. Can I not be in the future already?
We're leaders, that's right.
Did I just predict King 5? Okay, King 4. And we shared this with them at our first session this year, is that it's important to understand the implications of King 4, especially now that it's got a segment for SMEs. And so you plug yourself into something that is bigger. So out of this conversation, I would love to encourage our female founders to plug into an even bigger macro, global drive, right? So look at the SDGs.
The SDGs, it's huge in terms of giving us a framework in terms of how we operate. It also is an incredible way for us to start thinking about the why of our businesses. I think, I was actually talking to somebody this morning about revenue is actually your scorecard. It's like when you go into a tennis match, that's the score, is your revenue. But the thing that you do is to play good tennis. So your business is effectively what are you trying to affect or impact upon in terms of delivering a solution or a service or a product. The revenue is then the indicator of whether or not you're doing the right thing and if the market is responding to you appropriately. So the SDGs help us, I think, go back to impact in terms of our businesses and go back to the why of our business.
I love this because I think a lot of us start our businesses probably to survive, to put food on the table, but you get to a point where you have to start asking yourself some serious questions, especially if you want to sustain it 10 years from now, 20 years from now. What does it look like? And what do you plug into to ensure that you have, I suppose, accountability to a macro drive, to a macro movement?
Yeah.
And I think especially now, I watch Black Panther on.
Yes. Okay. So should this chat just be about Black Panther? Should this derail the whole conversation?
I love being African.
This though, on a very serious note, the fact that we haven't even finished the second month of 2018 and we've had pretty significant cultural moments, iconic moments, between Oprah declaring that the time is up to watching a movie like Black Panther that really just amplifies everything that we are. This is an important moment to be African, to be a woman, to be of color. We would be silly not to get onto that wave and ride it out and make sure that we are now being heard, understood, and we're owning the space. And so now it's almost like things have been opened up for us. Yeah. Now we must do the work because no one's going to hold that door for us. So now we must show up with amazing businesses that are impactful, businesses that employ other women, businesses that buy from other women,
businesses that are sustainable, that we will really deeply and truly impact 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What do our communities look like? What do our cities look like? What does the continent look like? And I love the fact that you've just mentioned that we need to leverage, we need to really take this opportunity and run with it because there's nothing that stops us. This is what our grandmothers fought for. This is what our great-grandmothers fought for.
And it's what we've even been fighting for because this change is happening swiftly. And that's why also with the rate of change and the pace of change that's happening, our relationships matter first. So if we can get our relationships within our businesses, amongst businesses, between big businesses, we will not only survive, we will thrive. Because as change happens, the one constant is the relationships that we hold. And so that's the asset. And that's, again, social capital.
And I love that because I think especially as Africans, we are more relational. It's always about our community. It's always about the neighbor or the child down the road. So we have to bring that into our businesses.
Absolutely.
We have to bring that into our methodology, which is why I am definitely driving the growth through collaboration. And the big focus this year is on collaborating, be it through mergers and acquisitions or just buying from each other, or like you said before, the social capital side of it. But we have to start collaborating. We have to start supporting each other because that's the only way we're going to drive change and unleash the true potential of this continent.
And I think we also need to be clear, which goes back to even the why. And I think, as you say, this idea of plugging into something so much bigger than I want to be able to pay my bills at the end of the month. That's important, by the way. But the bigness, I think, is so important because we start being able to take our seat at the table because we're now impacting, but we also start becoming players that can change economies. So, funny little statistic I read up about was for a small business to really move the needle in the economy, so to really feel like your business is contributing to the economy, it needs to employ a minimum of 100 people. So that is the challenge. How many businesses can we run, support, advocate for that employ 100 people or more?
Yeah, and I think that's why programs like ours is so important because we will accelerate that growth. So you no longer have to feel like you are alone or you have to try and figure this whole thing out on your own. How do I get to 100 employees? And I think you need to make sure that you're part of a village, part of a community that can help you get there because you don't have to get there on your own.
Yes.
But yes, I totally agree with you. And that's what we're doing with the female founders on our Accelerator program is how do we scale you up? So we're probably more a scalerator than an accelerator because it's important that and for me, we have enough startups.
Yeah.
We have so many
Yeah.
startups. We need to start scaling up, and we need to start looking at the next generation of corporates, the next generation of
multinationals
businesses,
that come out of here.
exactly that employ 100 people and more.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this.
It's a pleasure.
One tidbit, one gem you want to leave with our female founders
Oh my goodness.
for 2018.
For 2018 and beyond, I think, in fact, it's the words that I'm working on. Or the words I'm working on are focus, clarity, abundance, expansion.
I like. Okay. Thank you so much, love.
It's
I
a pleasure.
appreciate you sharing. She was just supposed to come for a meeting today, and then we just sort of turned it into this. I thought, let me just pick a brain on with you guys.
No pressure.
Thank you so much.
Thank
love.
you,
I
Anto.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
And bye.